Honorable members, we have quorum. Let's. Where is the front row on my right? Anyway, we have quorum. Okay. Call in the next nominee. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker.
Welcome to the Appointments Committee of the House. We are conducting confirmation hearings or vetting, as is commonly known, of persons that have been nominated by His Excellency the President to be checked to see if they are suitable to hold office as cabinet secretaries. Your name is Honorable Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, EGH.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
For the record, the committee here is chaired by yours truly, the Speaker of the National Assembly. On my right is the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Gladys Bose. Jeremiah Ndombi on my left is the Deputy Clerk. I'll invite all the members to introduce themselves, starting with Naisula, for the record.
Naisula Lesuda, MP Samburu West.
Kimani Shongo. Junet Mohammed.
Nelson Koech.
Kosing David.
Gikaria David.
Mase Mary, Teso South.
Abdul Rahim Daoud, Nordi Menti.
Owen Bayer, Kilifi North.
Robert Mbui, Kadiani.
Stephen Mule, Matungulu.
Dido Raso, Saku.
Abdishurie, Balambala.
Mishimboko Likoni.
Rehab Mukami, Nyeri.
Kitonga Murugara, Tharaka.
Thank you, Honorable Murkomen. You will, of course, be asked questions to answer them on oath. We have the holy books there. We have the Bible. We have the Hindu holy book and the Quran. Depending on your faith, which one do you swear by? The Holy Bible. Take it in your right hand and recite the oath.
I, Onesimus Kipchumba Murkomen, do swear that the evidence I shall give before this committee of the matter under its consideration shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. I'm sure the mic is not.
You are suffering from diminishing returns. You may sign the oath. Honorable Murkomen, you are one of the few who have got the luck to be vetted twice within 2 years. This is the same committee that vetted you some about 18 months ago. We before we embark on business, hand over your certificates through the sergeant to the clerk to check against what we have. You've also been a colleague of all these members in Parliament for the last 2 terms. In fact, 2.5 terms, or 2 terms and some fraction. So these are your colleagues. I have directed them in cases where we have met former colleagues like Wandayi, like Mbadi, to ask questions without fear or favor, with dignity and respect to each other. And we want precise and concise answers to punguza story mingi. And I've also requested the members that avoid unnecessary preambles to your questions. You just ask your questions so that they can be responded to. So to start in earnest, Honorable Murkomen, give us a short, no more than 5-minute opening statement telling us your name, your educational background, your work experience, your key competences that make you suitable for the appointment to which you have been nominated as Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for this opportunity. First, let me start by appreciating His Excellency the President for nominating me for a second time to serve this Republic. And should I be approved by this House, I will do it with dignity and vigor. Mr. Speaker, I am born and brought up in the eastern slopes of Cherangani Hills, a place called Mbadi, where I went to school, and thereafter went both to St. Joseph's High School, Kitale, and St. Patrick's High School, Iten. Both schools are sports giants. As a matter of fact, St. Joseph's Kitale did exceptionally well this year in the football matches, but St. Patrick's High School has always been known to be the athletics powerhouse. I brushed shoulders with world champions and gold medalists, some of whom were my classmates, but I didn't run. Instead, I was a footballer, Mr. Speaker, and I did fairly well based on the standards then in the district. Mr. Speaker, thereafter I joined the University of Nairobi to study law at the University of Nairobi School of Law, and graduated in 2004. Thereafter, I was awarded a scholarship to study for a postgraduate degree in law at the University of Pretoria, where I did a master's degree in trade and investment law in Africa. And thereafter, I also went to the American University Washington College of Law, where I did another degree, a master's degree in international law. Mr. Speaker, I was in between. Before the master's program, I did my privilege and was admitted to, I actually was awarded a diploma in law and thereafter admitted to the bar. Mr. Speaker, upon return from the United States in 2007, I was employed to teach at the Catholic University of Nairobi, where I am very proud of the first cohort of my students in my time, one of whom is the president of the Law Society of Kenya. Thereafter, Mr. Speaker, I joined Moi University as also, I taught in Moi University until the time I resigned in 2012 to join politics. In between, I was an adjunct lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Kenyatta University, and a few other colleges and institutions. And Honorable Junaid Mohammed was a beneficiary of that knowledge, Mr. Speaker, in the legal profession. Mr. Speaker, other than that, I need to say that the most relevant part of this experience in the university and college, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that throughout my tenure from high school to the university, I was a student leader. As a matter of fact, at the University of Nairobi, I was the first student to be elected to the president of the Law Society in my second year. And Mr. Speaker, I also served as chair for SONU for a short period of time as we reconstituted SONU. And Mr. Speaker, I also was the CU chair, not just for the University of Nairobi, but all the CUs in the country. I am a product of student movement. I have been brought up, mentored, both in Christian leadership circles and also in the political movement of students.
When you say CU means Christian Union.
Christian Union, yes, Mr.
Somebody
Speaker.
can think it's Cafeteria Union.
It's not CCU at the University of Nairobi. It's actually, Mr. Speaker, the Christian Union. Mr. Speaker, I was the president of the Fellowship of Christian Unions leadership across the country. Mr. Speaker, beyond that, I need to say that I also was a board member of the Youth Agenda, where our focus was to make sure that we mainstream youth issues. Mr. Speaker, I have worked with many civil society, both as a consultant, but also as a volunteer in the board. I do a lot of sports-related issues. Mr. Speaker, I was the captain of Bunge FC. And I see my members here, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Kikaria was a fantastic midfielder, a bit aggressive sometimes, but Mr. Speaker, I was the captain, and we did exceptionally well during my tenure, and I scored so many goals in different countries in East Africa. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because of the relevance of this sector of creative economy, youth, and sports. And Mr. Speaker, I'm a passionate sports fan, Mr. Speaker, and I believe that my nomination shall contribute to making the issues of the youth, Mr. Speaker, successful. I need to conclude by saying that I was elected in 2013 as a very young leader, not too young, but at least within the bracket of the youth. I was 32 years old. I came to the Senate, Mr. Speaker, and served immediately, nominated to serve in Pan-African Parliament, became the chair of Devolution Committee, graduated quickly to become the deputy majority leader. By second term, Mr. Speaker, I was the majority leader in the Senate. And Mr. Speaker, in my third term, in all these situations, the people of Elgeyo-Marakwet County elected me 3 times by a minimum of 75% of the votes. As a matter of fact, the last term, I was elected by 90% of the votes. Mr. Speaker, in all these processes of leadership, I got an opportunity to serve as a cabinet secretary for roads and transport, a position I held for until the 11th of November, 11th of July, when the president dissolved the cabinet. Mr. Speaker.
He didn't dissolve, he dismissed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Until then, I served in that capacity, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Murkomen. Welcome. I'll now invite the Deputy Speaker to be the first to ask you a question.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, my questions will just be two-way, where you're going and where you had come from, because we will judge your competence as a Cabinet Secretary for Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports based on your performance in your previous position of Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport. So I'd like us to tell us what you found when you went to the Ministry of Roads and Transport, and then what were your key achievements, and what is your legacy, so to speak, so that if we had to assess what Murkomen did during that time, we can be able to judge you by that. And then secondly, I'd like you to now tell us what is your vision when you go to the Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports docket. What's your vision of it? What are the challenges you have? Because you've been listening out, you've been in cabinet, you know what the challenges are, and you can make explanation on that. And as you know, I've been very vocal about that particular ministry. Thank you.
Proceed to answer.
Thank you, Mr.
And we expect
Speaker.
concise and precise responses.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I start by saying that my greatest success in the Ministry of Roads and Transport is leadership. My first responsibility was to be a leader, to put together a team that works together, to make sure that the ministry and the state agencies are working together seamlessly, Mr. Speaker. Some of the agencies that I found dysfunctional, especially Kenya Airports Authority, with too many of its senior staff acting. I made sure that, Mr. Speaker, we fixed that problem, because that problem was the cause of the other systemic problem within the institution itself. Mr. Speaker, I operated and worked with the managing directors, director generals, the PSS as a team, and at no time, Mr. Speaker, did you hear any squabbles in the ministry. Number two, the second success for me is to be able to lead for the 2 years with integrity and honor, without, Mr. Speaker, bringing my office into any disrepute. And, Mr. Speaker, for the 2 years, no accusation was leveled against me, Mr. Speaker, of any kind on matters of integrity. I carried myself with honor. I abhorred acts of corruption. I managed to lead and remove some of our staff, Mr. Speaker, in some of the agencies, including Kenya Rural Roads Authority, that had become Mr. Speaker, difficult for my predecessor to remove them because of acts of corruption. And, Mr. Speaker, in terms of delivery, Mr. Speaker, despite the difficult situation we found ourselves with pending bills, we were able to work together as a team with all the roads agencies to deliver about 1,000 kilometers of tarmac roads, both new roads and, Mr. Speaker, the ones that were being reconstructed. All of these roads are in small bits and pieces. You'll find one like Thika Magumu in Kiambu, or the road from Mtwapa to Kilifi, or the road from Kwanjumbu, Mariakani, or Masera Sori in Homa Bay, or the towns of Embu, Kericho, Bungoma, and other towns in the country. Cumulatively, Mr. Speaker, we did about 1,000 kilometers of roads, despite the difficulties we had with the budget. Mr. Speaker, on the part of development funds, I reorganized, Mr. Speaker, and pushed for the contracts that had been delayed for construction of the roads from Isiolo to Ajia to Mandera. And now, Mr. Speaker, all the contracts have been awarded under the African Development Bank and World Bank funding projects, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also led the process of ensuring that, Mr. Speaker, we get funds for our roads. Remember, when I came here, we had a huge pending bill, and it was very difficult for us to solve that issue. His Excellency the President gave me the opportunity to travel to China to work with our development partners, and through my efforts, Mr. Speaker, and collective efforts of the team in government, I managed to raise 37 billion shillings from the China Development Bank to support about 15 roads that, Mr. Speaker, gladly, unfortunately, I didn't live to see its completion, but they are commencing, Mr. Speaker, from the month of August. Mr. Speaker, beside that, I also pushed for the resources to construct the intelligent traffic system. I promised when I came for vetting here. Now the intelligent traffic system has been advertised. 221 junctions are going to be fixed in the Nairobi city, Mr. Speaker, for that technology. I led the process also of PPPs. From the road from Mombasa to Nairobi, the American government, American investor, Mr. Speaker, has made a proposal, and that proposal is ongoing because we have facilitated them. Mr. Speaker, we had a problem with the Rironi Mau Summit, one of the most popular cases. There was an existing contract that I took a step of courage, Mr. Speaker, to mutually terminate. And, Mr. Speaker, we should be able, as the President promised, also to advertise after September, when the mutual termination period is over, so that we get a contractor by January next year. Mr. Speaker, in the road sector also, I'd like to say that, Mr. Speaker, we have done a commendable job to raise resources. My last act in that office, Mr. Speaker, was to make sure that we get resources for maintaining our roads. When I came to Parliament several times, because these questions were asked, I appraised the country that we have what we call orphaned roads. And these roads are, especially in Kenya, rural roads, and they needed significant resources. Our demand per year for maintaining the roads is 150 billion, Mr. Speaker, yet we only raised 84 billion. This year, I took the significant step
did the public participation, and eventually we were able to increase the road maintenance levy by 7 shillings, working together with the petroleum sector to make sure that that increase did not make the cost of petroleum higher than it is. If it is something significant I'm leaving back in this ministry for the benefit of the honorable members who are here, we shall be having now constituency roads management having at least 100 million shillings in every constituency, up from 62 million in the last financial year. And we should be able to fix the problems that we have in our roads. That needed leadership, needed boldness, Mr. Speaker, to make that significant contribution. Mr. Speaker, it wasn't just the road sector that I superintended upon. There was also the transport sector. We did a lot in the port. Mr. Speaker, we were able to increase the efficiency of the port by 12%. We handled 1.6 million TEUs of cargo, up from 1.4. And this year, Mr. Speaker, we are going to handle 2 million TEUs. In also that sector, Mr. Speaker, we have increased investment, especially in Lake Victoria. Now the oil transport that I saw Honorable Wandayi speaking about, now fuel is being transported across Lake Victoria. You don't need to burden the roads across to Uganda. Mr. Speaker, we are also building piers in Kisumu and also getting a ferry from Fangano Island. Some of those investments, Mr. Speaker, were based on the things we did. In the Lapsset corridor, for the first time, the Lamu port was able to handle significant cargo, 60 million metric tons of fertilizer destined towards Ethiopia, based on our diplomatic work within the Lapsset corridor. Now Lapsset corridor is functioning. The road from Lamu to Ijara, Mr. Speaker, which was a Maram road, we made sure that we fixed that problem. Now a tarmac road is being constructed, it's on the way. We have up to February next year to make sure that that tarmac road is delivered to Ijara, and the road from Ijara to Isiolo is also ongoing, Mr. Speaker. I look forward within next year that the Lapsset corridor will be completed, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also did some work at the airport. You remember that when I arrived, the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport was a place of shame. All the airports do not have a maintenance policy. Mr. Speaker, after fixing the human resource, we made sure also we fixes the maintenance policy. Now we've been able to fix Jomo Kenyatta International Airport drainage system. We've also been dealt with the roofing, and Mr. Speaker, there is a progress in that direction. We've also fixed, Mr. Speaker, many of the other airports. There was a lighting problem in Eldoret. Wilson Airport, for many of us who are here who've used the Wilson Airport, you know that it's full of potholes and bumps, Mr. Speaker. Now we have awarded a contract to make sure that the aprons and the runway is redone afresh, because Wilson Airport is among the busiest airports in the continent, Mr. Speaker. Even as we did that, we completed also contracts that were pending for our airstrips in Anyuki, airstrip in Nakuru now are ongoing. We finished the Matulo airstrip, Mr. Speaker. We opened new routes for airlines to go to Kabundo in Homa Bay. We did in Migori, Mr. Speaker. We did also new route to Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, now our airspace is booming. I opened doors, Mr. Speaker, for new airlines. We have Fly Dubai now flying to Mombasa. Air Indigo is now flying directly from India to Nairobi. And one of my last also responsibilities was to grant Etihad a flight to come back to Nairobi. All this is done balancing, Mr. Speaker, with the interests of the Kenya, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Airways. Even that, Mr. Speaker, is just a tip of the things we have succeeded to do. Let me just say the last one, Mr. Speaker, is you know, I left the minister abruptly, so this is an opportunity to share. And I just in 2 more minutes, Mr. Speaker, is to say that in the railway sector, we've done a very good job to revamp the commuter rail system in the city of Nairobi, increasing the 10 stations in the city. We significantly pushed the Kumi program of the World Bank, which will give us 60 billion shillings to revamp the commuter rail system in the city. And Mr. Speaker, that will also lead to increasing the stations and therefore significantly reduce climate impact in the city and pollution, because we will be using mass transit of the railway. Mr. Speaker, we have done so also by connecting Mombasa
Miritini itself, and we are doing a construction of Riruta, Mr. Speaker, all the way to Ngong, and hopefully then to Rongai, so that then we can significantly move our people using commuter rail. I was in the process of getting funding, working together with private sector and Ugandan government to make sure that we extend the railway from Naivasha to Kampala. I believe that my successor, the person who comes after me, my successor, Mr. Speaker, will continue from where we left insofar as that is concerned. There's so many other things we've done in the transport sector, in the Namata. All these will be now factors of history, and we shall have the time to be able to share. So I just want to say this, Mr. Speaker, that even as we accuse the government, and there is a general accusation across board that we've not done the communication, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, no matter how much we try to publicize these great things we have done, it is trounced by criticism and predetermined programming, Mr. Speaker, to label certain people as a failure. I have worked passionately, committed to deliver my work, working sometimes up to midnight, Mr. Speaker, and this is a job I look back and say the last 2 years have been exciting for me, and I look forward to also taking the same energy and vigor to the next ministry. Mr. Speaker, the vision I have for the young people of this republic, there are many people who have asked themselves that, why Murkomen? Why is he being put here? I believe that, Mr. Speaker, the president carefully chose me because of my energy, my commitment, my passion, and my history with young people. Mr. Speaker, I do a lot of mentorship across the country, even when I was in the Ministry of Roads and Transport. Mr. Speaker, I ran a tournament, support a tournament, Mr. Speaker, that runs in about 5 counties, and we were moving to the 6th county in the Kerio Valley region, which uses sports, and for that reason, it was football last year, to bring warring communities together, the Pokots, the Marakwets, the Turkana, the Samburus, Mr. Speaker, the people of Tugen, to bring them together to play together. And last year, as a result of that tournament, for the first time, we had an opportunity. Some leaders from Turkana got the first time to be in Kapenguria when we were playing football, and I was really surprised. And that way, sports, Mr. Speaker, is also one way of bringing people together. I have a passion for the young people, and I believe that that passion is going to be translated to action, Mr. Speaker, once I assume office. And that passion is to sort the problems that are bedeviling our young people. The problem of unemployment, Mr. Speaker. The problem of our sports sector, the way it's mismanaged, Mr. Speaker. And many other issues that I hope we will delve into.
That will
because my teacher, Honorable Gladys Boshole, has asked a very wide question. If I'm left to answer, Mr. Speaker,
I want to narrow you down now to
yes, I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
the much you have said, and said it well. Majority Leader?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Going forward now, we answer questions directly.
Honorable Speaker, allow me to start with a question on FIFA. CS nominee FKF received a letter from FIFA in March threatening suspension following a litany of court cases bedeviling the Kenyan Federation. And to date, FKF has not held their AGM, nor released an election roadmap. If you get the opportunity to serve in this ministry or don't want to hear what you intend to do, I do know you're a football fan, but the teams that you support are not Kenyan teams, at least the ones I see you online supporting. What will you do to make sure that our football gets back its glory and at least Kenyans can be watching our Premier League the way they watch the English Premier League? 2, you have clearly put out your report card for the time that you are the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure. I remember a year ago, you appeared in Parliament and promised Parliament and the people of Kenya that you would be exploring PPP as a model, an alternative model of financing huge infrastructural projects. I do know there was some work on Adani at the airport. Would want to hear whether this is the Kipchumba Murkomen who has been accused on social media of selling, in quotes, our airport. Did you or did you not sell our airport? And who did you sell to?
Take Junet as well.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes.
I have taken note that the CS nominee, last time we vetted him here under your chairmanship, and I've seen he has just come with the same suit that he came with that time. I have the picture with me here in my phone, Mr. Speaker. I was waiting for a different one.
It's the same suit.
The same suit and the same tie. I was looking for something else.
Maybe that's his attire of luck.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the people who live in the valleys of Elgeyo Marakwet told him, if you want to get approval, just take that suit and that tie.
Yes.
Anyway, Mr. Speaker, the question I want to ask him is that one is about this Ministry of Sports. I wanted to ask him that about protection and growth of local content. What measures will you take to protect Kenyan artists from plagiarism? Then how is the government going to assist local artists, local creatives in achieving 60% of content for local broadcast? How will you ensure that all Kenyans, including those who do not have access to TV, can consume our local content? How will you achieve that? And lastly, Waziri, from your previous office, please put it very clear to this committee. What is this matter of Adani and Jomo Kenyatta Airport? When did you travel to India? Whom did you go? What is the content of the letter? Everything. We want to know whether the Jomo Kenyatta Airport is still Kenyan Airport or it is now Mumbai International Airport. Please.
Yes, nominee.
Mr. Chair, as a matter of fact, what...
You either refer to me as chairman or speaker. I'm not a chair. I'm sitting on one.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
The chairperson, or chairman.
Yes.
Why don't you like chairperson, Mr. Speaker? Because you don't want to give room for agenda. Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If I say this, I will offend you and other people. I am an ardent fan. Contrary to what Mr. Kimani Ichung'wah said, I am a serious fan of Gor Mahia. I used to. Does
that offend me?
Because you are a fan. I suspect you are AFC.
I'm a fan of Arsenal. No. My local team is AFC.
On a light note, I used to. On Saturdays in the St. Patrick's High School, we used to be allowed to get out of school. So we used to sneak from Iten all the way to Eldoret to watch Gor Mahia play KCC. And I was really used to be thrilled. So I've been a Gor Mahia fan for a long period of time. Besides that, in UK, I support Manchester, and in Spain, I support Real Madrid. Mr. Speaker, sports is for fun. And Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah. Those days when we used to support Gor Mahia, AFC, and all the other teams, Shabana, among others, KCC, we even used to know all the players, up to the reserve team. Now, Mr. Speaker, I don't even know our Gor Mahia players, who they are, even when they change. Why? Because the standard of football has gone down over time. It is a paradox because access to media has increased. Meanwhile, the accessing sports and publicity of sports and standard of sports has gone down. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah that the place that has to start is, Mr. Speaker, sports management, and for this purpose, FKF. Mr. Speaker, it is not right that for the last 8 years, you have an organization that has a leadership in office that has not been elected, but they are there in perpetuity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's not just FKF, it's AK. AK has been there for 12 years without an election. Cricket Association, the same. Badminton, the same. Mr. Speaker, for swimming, the same. There is a problem, a serious problem, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to sports management in this country. And Mr. Speaker, what is also worse is that there is a collaboration. And unfortunately, as an officer of the court, I have to say this. There is a collaboration between these organizations and, Mr. Speaker, court orders. If you find why the AK has never held elections for 12 years, it's because they are perpetuating themselves using a court That is the same way the FKF is perpetuating itself along a court order. Mr. Speaker, the first thing I will do is to make sure that we bring all the stakeholders, and Mr. Speaker, I promise I'll do that within the next 1 month, all the stakeholders in different sectors of sports to make sure that we have a conversation on how to turn around these sports. Number two, Mr. Speaker, I would like, and I hope the Chief Justice is watching me, or even if she's not watching me, she'll be told. I'd like to have a meeting with the Chief Justice, should I be approved, to discuss with the Chief Justice how they will expeditiously make decisions in relation to, Mr. Speaker, elections and officials of sports associations. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Justice and our judges must understand that they are blocking young people from accessing opportunities, Mr. Speaker. The third issue, Mr. Speaker, is that I am going to request those people who have served for more than 8 years in any federation, Mr. Speaker, to recuse themselves and give an opportunity to new people who have energy and vigor to be elected, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they take over these associations. The last thing, Mr. Speaker, I'll say on that point is
they will never recuse themselves.
I know.
Just restructure the constitution.
I'm coming to the next one.
Give them 2 terms, non-renewable. After 2 terms, 3 years, 4 years, they finish, they go.
I was coming to that, Mr. Speaker. I was coming to the next issue. The next issue, Mr. Speaker, is that we will make sure that we will not finance any sports federation that, Mr. Speaker, is not following the Sports Act and does not do regular elections. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that we must deal with is that we cannot hide. Our sports federations cannot continue to hide, saying that the resources they get from FIFA or World Athletics Organization or International Badminton Organizations are not subject to auditing. We must audit that money, Mr. Speaker, and we will involve Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We will involve DCI if it requires, Mr. Speaker. That money is given to Kenya, not for the association themselves. It's on behalf of the young people of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, and we must take them by the horns, Mr. Speaker. And I promise you, I am not an easy person to play with. I am going to go straight to these federations. I'm going to deal with these federations. And if they want to, Mr. Speaker, to continue operating, they must accept to work with us. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that to return our football and to return our sports, Mr. Speaker, back, we must also make sure that football management is done well. But on the other side, we must also support the private sector. For example, Safaricom with Chapadimba, they're doing a very good job in identifying talent. We need to encourage other associations, other companies, Mr. Speaker, with tax rebates that are paid on time and transparently to make sure that we return private sector to be able to support our sports teams, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know there are many other issues on sports, but that was very specific to FIFA and the cases that are there. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, Mr. Mwenda is my friend, Mwendwa, and Tuei is a person I know. I want these people to just believe in the people of Kenya and give a chance.
You are confirmed.
Yes.
You are not be confirmed to go and work with friends. You are going confirmed to go and work for the people of Kenya.
That's why I'm saying, Mr. Speaker,
yes,
they are my friends, but they need to know, Mr. Speaker, that time is up. The people of Kenya would like to have an organization that is being run in a proper manner and in an accountable manner. And they need to know one thing. Murkomen is not alone. Now I have an army behind me of young people. Mr. Speaker, they either voluntarily exit these positions and accept the changes that we need, or we greet them or occupy them, Mr. Speaker. That
will be unlawful.
Mr. Speaker.
And we encourage you not to go that route.
No, Mr. Speaker.
If you are confirmed.
No, not illegally. We will do it, Mr. Speaker, in a peaceful manner. Because, Mr. Speaker, we will follow Article 37 very carefully, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that this is achieved. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that on the PPP issue of the airport, PPP is a very important concept of developing our infrastructure. You know that, Mr. Speaker, the as I said earlier, on the road of Rironi-Mau Summit, already the previous government had committed itself on the PPP. Unfortunately, the contractor they worked with was not willing to ensure that there is no transfer of guarantee to the people of Kenya. That is the reason why we are terminating the contract. Otherwise, the road would have started if they had accepted not to transfer that burden to the people of Kenya. We are redoing that PPP because of that. Mr. Speaker, for the airport, I want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker, to the people of Kenya. I have not, and I do not have the capacity to enter into any PPP as a person, as a cabinet secretary. And I have not in any way sold the airport. Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is this. The president has said this publicly. The PCS has said this publicly. PPP, the people of Kenya need to be taken through the process of PPP. A PIIP proposal, which is the case of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that is privately initiated proposal. Mr. Speaker, which is part of PPP. Mr. Speaker, is not the first one. The first PIIP, Mr. Speaker, in this country was the expressway. The expressway was through a PIIP. The government evaluated it. They found a proper contractor. Now we have expressway with a contract period of 30 years, transferable back to the people of Kenya once the road is used and maintained. Mr. Speaker, the difference between the expressway and the airport is that there was a proposal. And this is not just one proposal. People keep coming with proposals. Some are serious, some are not serious. Some you invite them to come for meetings, they don't come. When a PIIP proposal has been done, the contracting authority, in this case Kenya Airports Authority, goes through a preliminary process of establishing the viability and the verifying the existence of the company, the capacity, and so forth. Once they do the preliminary process, Mr. Speaker, as the case is in Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, that process now moves to PPP committee, PPP's directorate in the ministry, in the treasury. That process has not even reached the treasury yet. What the Kenya Airports Authority was to do is to first establish the relationship with the proponent. Now, they have reached a certain threshold now that they should be able now to do public participation and stakeholder engagement, after which they will send the report to PPP's committee. The PPP directorate will move it back to the contracting authority. The contracting authority will write to the ministry. The ministry, the cabinet secretary in charge of transport, when the time comes, will write to the attorney general. The attorney general will go through it, Mr. Speaker, if he agrees. Also, it is forwarded to the treasury minister. The minister, if he agrees, you do a CAB memo. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you have worked in government. A CAB memo will be circulated to among the parties. It's tabled in the cabinet. And if the cabinet agrees, they pass it. So for someone to wake up one morning and say all such an elaborate process would have involved one individual, let alone even one agency. A PPP process is a collective process of government. And I want to assure the people of Kenya that your assets are safe. Jomo Kenyatta International Airport is safe. When this process advances, and I hope it advances, we will get to the level where we will make sure that the product that we get is going to benefit the people of Kenya. One thing I want to assure you, the first thing I did was to resolve the dispute that was there. There was a claim of 20 billion shillings hanging on KA. Through negotiation and mediation, we made sure that we negotiated out and only we are paying 600 million shillings. Mr. Speaker, that now the airport is ready for investment, ready to receive investment, like other airports. Once we are done with that, Malindi, for example, where Honorable Baya comes from, Mr. Speaker, has got funding from Italian government, and we are able to get funding from Italian government to build a modern airport in Malindi. This is how we should move. If we succeed to get PPP in Jomo Kenyatta, and again, another thing I want to assure Kenyans, where the proponent will build the terminal is the only size of land, maybe 20, 30 acres. It's not 1,000 acres, the total acres of Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. It's only a small section that will be concessioned where the proponent will build the terminal. And we need it. Otherwise, if we don't need it, Mr. Speaker, if we don't do it, we will become, Mr. Speaker, the last in this region. Ethiopia has defeated us. Rwanda is about to complete their airport. Tanzania has improved theirs. Even Uganda have a better airport. Even Entebbe is looking more presentable. The same Kenyans who are talking about leaking roofs, drainage systems, Mr. Speaker, very bad infrastructure.
CS nominee
should be able to support that process.
Nominee.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You're just confirming one thing.
Yes.
Even the president lamented that the weakest link in his government was public communication. You seem to have all the facts, but nobody has been told.
Mr. Speaker, despite the fact that PCS has said, despite the fact that the presidents were communicated,
but it has come,
remember this
it
issue.
came because of the storm. But if it was explained along the way as you went about these things, the public would have understood you better.
Let me absolve the KA for this reason. This is a proposal of March.
Honorable
of March.
Yes. I think what we just need to we have to admit that we were bad communicators. Just assure Kenyans that you will communicate better in your next assignment, and that you'll advise your successor to ensure that this message you have given us today of the great work you have done will go out to be known by the public. We can now.
Yes, Unit.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with you. You see, Jomo Kenyatta is the biggest airport in the country.
In the region.
In the region, actually. And that's the biggest, one of the biggest assets Kenyans have. You want to go PPP with it. And Adani has written a letter saying that he wants to go PPP. You are not informing Kenyans that Adani, a man called Adani, has written to us. And you expect Kenyans to keep quiet. And they can see the airport was almost going. They will not keep quiet. They will not keep quiet.
Mr. Speaker, let's move on.
For the record, let me just say for the record.
You are being evaluated for Minister for Sports, so let's move to sports.
But my integrity on this issue is important.
We move on.
That, Mr. Speaker, this is a proposal of March this year. Before you communicate to the people of Kenya, you always get every year 2-3 proposals. As a matter of fact, I can confess, we've received, for airports in Kenya, we've received more than 20 proposals when I was in office. But you keep evaluating to see who is a joker, who is a serious person. Once you achieve a certain threshold, the public participation engagement is done, which was supposed to be done from this July. But, Mr. Speaker, it coincided with the time that the president made the changes, when we were now supposed to do this. Number two, more than 5 times, I have communicated PPP on Jomo Kenyatta International Airport through Parliament. Several times I've been asked this question, and I've said there are proposals that we are working on, looking at, and we will communicate to the public about the PPP. So, Mr. Speaker, the time had not reached for us to make that.
You've made the point.
The last thing I want to say is that Honorable Jeanette talked about protection of local content. I think, Mr. Speaker, we just need to be serious as a country. We need to implement our intellectual property laws, Mr. Speaker. I know that we have institutions in place, Kenya Copyright Board, Kenya Industrial Property Institute. We have also, Mr. Speaker, Anti-Counterfeit Agency, which I served as the first board member who are supposed to do enforcement. I think that needs to be done. Suffice to note, Mr. Speaker, that is not within my ministry. It's in the Arts and Culture department in the Ministry of Gender, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also in the terms of local content, I totally agree with Honorable Jeanette. We need to bring Citizen TV and Royal Media have a product that they try to support local content. Mr. Speaker, they want to go the same way with Sony Studio, Universal Studios, and so forth. We need to support more of the same of local companies that are going to take local content, air them, and, Mr. Speaker, pay our artists across the country. And this 60% local content is easily achievable if we find ways of engaging them. And I think what I have had for the short period after my nomination, I have engaged the sector. Many people think that this is one sector that has never had proper public participation. The people have the ideas, the stakeholders have the ideas. It needs just a leadership that is listening, and I'm going to listen to them, and we work together towards achieving this 60% local content.
Members, one question each, and Minister nominee, you answer concisely and precisely. Naisula.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to say this because PPP might happen again where the nominee will go to. And you heard what the nominee of Treasury said this morning, that Kenyans are scared of PPPs because most of the time there's so much miscommunication about it. We hope as a committee you will do better in your communication and also look at those PPPs that they serve the interest of the country more than the investors. That is what the nominee of Treasury said. But to my question.
That is just a comment. You will
It's a
not
comment. Don't
answer to it.
Yeah. So I have a comment. Kenya is hosting the African Nations Championship 2025 next year and the AFCON in 2027. Do you have any ideas on how Kenya can deliver this to world-class standards? What will we do differently if we find you suitable to hold that office? And how do you plan to incorporate stakeholder and public feedback into your planning process? And lastly, do you know if as a country we have a gender violence and abuse policy in sports?
Nominee.
interest of time, I will go straight to, as guided Mr. Speaker, to say that yes, I am aware that we are hosting CHAN next year. We are preparing Nyayo Stadium and Kasarani for purpose of, to be ready by December for purpose of CHAN, and then in preparation for the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that to deliver this world-class, to deliver the tournament to a world-class level, Mr. Speaker, we are going to put in place a steering committee that has all the stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I'm also inviting, and I will invite the private sector to quickly join in. We don't need to wait until late, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that they invest, Mr. Speaker, in the opportunities that come with, Mr. Speaker, the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027. Mr. Speaker, also we are working on the infrastructure. Talanta Stadium, which is going to be in Jamhuri along Gong Road, Mr. Speaker, is ongoing. I will make sure that it's delivered to the required standards. Mr. Speaker, also all the stadium where the players who are going to train, we are going also to make sure that the stadia are put to be world class. One thing that is lacking in our country as we speak, Mr. Speaker, is that we do not have standards put in place in regulation of infrastructure. The law itself, the Sports Act, says that Sports Kenya will set the standards, but the regulations must be put in place. As a cabinet secretary, I promise this committee that will be a priority for me to make sure that all the infrastructure across the country are going to be built based on world-class standards. Because, Mr. Speaker, you will find some counties are awarding contracts, some institutions at national level are awarding contracts to build a stadium, but if you realize the stadium themselves, they are not world class. We are redoing now Nyayo Stadium. Yes, we are redoing Nyayo Stadium. Something we used to think it has 30,000 capacity. The reality is that it can only accommodate 18,000 people. The same to Kasarani is going to come down to 50,000 from the 60,000 we used to think. Because when you now deal with the standards itself, required standards, it's going to be different. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the gender violence is a serious issue in sports, and particularly more prevalent, Mr. Speaker. In fact, not just violence, gender violence, abuse, and sexual abuse, Mr. Speaker, among athletes who are women. Mr. Speaker, you know the case of Agnes Tirop. You are an ardent fan of athletics, who was killed, Mr. Speaker, in my county. Mr. Speaker, that is just one case. I know athletes, world-class athletes with world records, whom I have had to assist in the past as a senator, to call the DCI to protect them from attacks, from, Mr. Speaker, pests that call themselves husbands. Once they see an athlete as a potential, they present themselves as suitors, Mr. Speaker, pretend to be in a marriage, Mr. Speaker, and then they prey on them and take their wealth. Mr. Speaker, this is an area that I have a passion for, not just because I've been appointed here, but something I have thought through. Even when I went to the funeral of Agnes Tirop, this is some of the things I talked about. And as a result of what happened with the Agnes Tirop, there was a committee that was formed in the ministry that came up with a raft of proposals. One, Mr. Speaker, that all training camps must, if a lady is going to be in a training camp, we must have a female matron in the training camp. Mr. Speaker, for junior athletics, you match training camps with the neighboring institutions. We need to oversight also the managers and the coaches, Mr. Speaker. Not just enough to register them, but we must be able to oversight them to make sure that they are following certain procedures. We don't want our athletes.
Some of them are the pests.
Yes.
Yes, if you don't evaluate them properly.
Absolutely. Some of them are the pests. Mr. Speaker, we will not allow as a ministry any of our teams to travel, women to travel for international assignments if they are not accompanied by a female matron. We will not allow them to travel with men alone. Mr. Speaker, this is an area with all those raft of proposals, we are going to make sure that those proposals are put into regulations and be part of also of the revised law, because we need to revise the Sports Act. The Sports Act, Mr. Speaker, does not recognize at all the institutions of county government, does not recognize so many things that are modern. We will make sure that these issues raised by Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, are going to be incorporated in the sports updated sports policy.
Let's take Nelson, Posing, and Gikaria, one question each in that row.
Waziri, the Olympics are ongoing, and I like the fact that you've also raised the issue of athletes from the North Rift. There's a dire situation with our athletes. As much as they are doing Kenya proud, there's really nothing to show for in terms of infrastructure and support that the government has provided to athletes. What you see there is sweat and tears from athletes who've struggled without any support. Many of you have seen athletes, dodging motor vehicles and motorcycles on the road, training. That should not be the situation our athletes should be subjected to. Many of them actually have made it into the global stage just by sheer determination. Waziri, coming from that region, please tell the country what you will do different this time around. Your predecessor, when he was here, said the same thing. He said he was going to change. He actually said he was going to give them world-class treatment, but the situation is totally different today. Number two, the people of Kericho County have sent me. No, this is a comment. They can decide to answer or ignore, but just for the record, the people of Kericho County have sent me to you. I landed with you in Kericho County, in Kerenga Airstrip. And there was a contractor on site. Immediately we left, the contractor left. What really happened, Waziri?
Thank you. They left together. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, many Kenyans think that you have actually been taken to the right place because you come from a county of a home of champions, exactly. So I think many people are seeing that, including myself. But my question, Honorable Murkomen, is there is a gap. And again, people think the Minister for Sports is Minister of Nairobi, so they think that it's Minister of Nairobi. There's nothing on the ground. So if you get the favor of House and you become the Minister, Honorable Murkomen, what will you do to bring the nexus between the national office, your office at national level, and the county, so that people in sub-locations or locations can actually feel that the Minister for Sport is their minister? Is there any way where good people or good sport people, and particularly maybe football, can win in that sub-location or location and be taken through, so that at least they can also feel like they're also national people, so that they don't see the Minister for Sports as only Minister for Nairobi? Thank you.
Gikaria.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine is just to, I'm just hoping that the nominee will crack the whip at FKF. Honorable Chairman, yes, and he has to, Honorable Chairman. I remember one day, 142 million was paid to some English company to procure the broadcasting van, which never arrived in the country. And after paying, we were told that the company that was given that money went into insolvency. So I think it is important for us to crack. But my question is, the nominee, my friend Murkomen, one of the best strikers in the Bunge Football Club, is football and talent was created at the youth centers, at the location and sub-location, then districts are those days, either sponsored by, in collaboration with, partnership with either Germany, Netherlands, and England. I don't know whether there's a policy for you to bring back, because when you talk about football, people think of Harambee Stars and AFC and Gor Mahia, but these players come from some place. So what policy is there to revamp the youth centers' sports, not only for football, but sports in general? Thank you, Chairman.
can answer those three, nominee.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Koech has talked about infrastructure. We have a number of pending stadia that needs to be completed. That includes, Mr. Speaker, Kapkatet Stadium in his county. It includes also, Mr. Speaker, the Wote Stadium in Makueni. It also includes the Kamarin, the famous Kamarin Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Iten. In fact, I was so embarrassed. I'm sure most of you have seen this documentary in CNN, which has been run in the last 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's now Kamarin is a monument of shame because the athletes there are complaining about the infrastructure, and the journalists are showing how the Kamarin has become what it is. Mr. Speaker, I have been briefed already, Mr. Speaker, in the process of preparing myself for this confirmation hearing, that some of the processes are ongoing in terms of delivering the infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that the President has already given direction that sports fund should be wholly supporting the sports activities, and one of which is delivery of infrastructure. I will make sure that, unfortunately, I'm being followed by the problem of pending bills all the way to sports infrastructure, but we'll make sure that we structure the sports fund in such a way that we'll deliver our infrastructure. We need to complete Bugungu Stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma. We need to complete the stadium, Mr. Speaker, in Bungoma.
Masinde Muliro.
Masinde Muliro, yes. I was confusing with the one in
Buhong is also stalled.
Yes, it's stalled, but the main one was to make sure that Masinde Muliro is covered properly and completed. The one is Kericho is completed because we built it recently because of these Madaraka issues. We are going to do a Kwale one. It must be also up to standard, but also all the other stadiums, Mr. Speaker, that are still pending will be completed to standard.
Speaker, also Udaya Stadium and Ruringu Stadium.
Ruringu and Udaya, Mr. Speaker, have also, especially Ruringu is in advanced stage. We'll make sure that we complete and restructure it. It is part of the stadiums, Mr. Speaker, that are going to be used in African Cup of Nations for training, and we will make sure that we deal with that. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of, so the infrastructure is very important. The second thing is, Mr. Speaker, it's not just enough to do infrastructure. The government must invest in the training itself, in identification of talent, and I'll marry this with the question of Honorable Kikaria. We will use the Kenya Academy of Sports to make sure that we establish training centers in at least all the counties, Mr. Speaker, where we are identify talent are trained. We will work also with the schools. Schools are better placed to help us to identify the talent. There's some of our footballers like Adrian, Mr. Speaker, who are picked last year to go to Spain, who are, as a result of sports championship in high school and in primary school. We will make sure that we work with them. In fact, one of the issues that I need to explore is to make sure that the Kenya Academy of Sports are going to train all the teachers who are coaches across the country. And not just training, they must also be certified, so that that certification is going to be recognized in their promotion. So that we need to use the teachers who are already in schools to make sure that we develop. That is really what is bottom up in terms of sports. Mr. Speaker, just to mention the Karenga Stadium in passing, as has been asked by Honorable Nelson, airstrip. It is true that we established and built Karenga airstrip for purpose at that point in time to facilitate the travel as insofar as the Madaraka Day was concerned. However, we had promised the people of Kericho that we will do a world-class airport there, and we needed land. Even when we built the airstrip, the land did not belong to the government of Kenya. It's still being owned by the private company that owns the tea farm. And the negotiations are in advanced stage, Mr. Speaker. I believe we have, that we will succeed to get, they had offered about 20 acres, but I said it will be useful to get at least 100 acres in that place so that we build an airstrip properly with a proper terminal, Mr. Speaker, to serve the people of Kericho. The money had already been set aside by Kenya Airports Authority. Some of the money that was allocated at that time, part of it has been used, part has been left to complete the negotiations. I have no doubt in my mind that my successor will deliver Karenga airstrip, Mr. Speaker, in the fullness of time. Had I been given a a bit of more time in the same ministry, I had no doubt that within the next 1 year, we were going to be able to deliver the Karenga airstrip. Not just Karenga airstrip, many other airstrips across the country that the people of Kenya are demanding, because we want to make travel become bottom-up, cheaper, and our country accessible, including the plans we had in Moyale and Marsabit County and a number of the airstrips, Mr. Speaker. I agree with Honorable Kosing. Honorable Kosing's county produces some of the best athletes in the country. Mr. Speaker, you know, Honorable Kosing and I come from the same area. Leland area produces some of the best athletes, world beaters. But, Mr. Speaker, the facilities are not there. There's a place that border both of us, they have a small training camp. There's also another training camp in Kapengura, among other places. But, Mr. Speaker, most of those camps are owned by private people, and they're very small. Mr. Speaker, the first gap is that Sports Act does not recognize counties else anywhere. That is why we must review Sports Act immediately to make sure that even as national government set standards and do some of the sports functions, the county governments are given, have a partnership with national government insofar as implementation. Mr. Speaker, we also need to make sure that sports development, the grassroots, the same question that had been asked by Honorable Kikaria and Honorable Nelson, that we need to make sure that through Academy of Sports, we are identifying talent very early and mark them to be taken to specific areas of training so that we can succeed. In fact, the other thing that we must do is to make sure that even as athletes prepare for their sports, they should not leave their education. There is a serious gap, especially in athletics, Mr. Speaker, where many of the athletes, once they go to running, they are told, you know, concentrate on running. Yet when we go to rugby, you have graduates with master's degree and they still succeed in rugby sevens and their rugby career. So it's just an attitude of how we fashioned the athletics. We need to make sure also we support the education. And to follow what Honorable Kikaria said, we need also to deal with these investments. We need to attract more people to establish academies in the country, sports academies. I know the international schools have very good facilities for training young people. We need also that to be affordable to the people at the bottom of the pyramid by making sure that we support investors who can come from out of the country to do what used to be done in Madare and other areas to using, Mr. Speaker, establishment of academies. Mr. Speaker, the last thing I'd like to say is that Honorable Kikaria spoke about the 142 million van and the all problems that we have in this sector. Mr. Speaker, corruption is a big issue in this.
Already covered that.
Yes, I'm just saying that, just as he said, we are going to be able to deal with the issue of corruption head on.
A forensic audit.
Yes,
on
Mr.
how
Speaker.
much money international organizations have been sending to these institutions.
It is so ordered, Mr. Speaker. You have ordered.
Mary.
Thank you. You've touched on sports academies. Honorable nominee, 31 academies of sports are earmarked to commence this financial year, 24-25. They were advertised, but again, cancelled. Honorable nominee, we are at a time when Kenyans are tired of too much talking. Kenyans want to see action, not what has been witnessed, PR, managing of members and representatives of the people. I want you to tell Kenyans, if you succeed in this nomination to the ministry, how long will it take you to advertise for the commencement of the sports academies? And these academies are being funded by the sports fund. I happen to be a member in that committee. And you have said that it is possible to get partnerships even to support that endeavor. So tell Kenyans when we will see the sports academies commence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To Honorable Murkomen, we've worked with him in this Transport Committee, and I want to ask him, you have talked about the Chan 2025 and 2027, but I didn't hear you mention anything about the stadium in Meru being used, because the stadium was done for over 1 billion shillings, and already it has not been even handed over. The running track is coming out. And the youth who come to leagues, they spend over 1 million shillings just in courses run by FKF for training and all that. But in return, they do not get anything. And then they pay 60,000 to join leagues. And after joining leagues, they have to pay to use the stadium, 15,000 shillings. And I believe it's all over. So my question to you, Honorable Murkomen, is what are you going to do about the youth? It's not just football. It's all sports which we need the youth to be involved. And as well, the same Sports Kenya, which did Meru Kinoru Stadium, and it's a very big stadium, I believe you've been there, demolished our police station in the stadium, demolished the ACC's office, and promised to give 42 million to build new ones, where your two predecessors, if you are confirmed, Honorable Ambassador Amina, she ignored it. Honorable Ababu Mamba, when he came to Parliament, he says, yes, as soon as funds are available, he will give. So I want to know from you if that one for Kinoru, what you will do. And we've got even another stadium in Maua, which is waterlogged. We've got another one in Kobo. It's not there. And in Timau and many other places.
You are making a speech. Yes, yes, Murugara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, talk about Standia. The Chuka Stadium is also not complete. Talk about your previous ministry of roads. Tharaka-Nithi is the home of stored roads, the most ugly of them all, including Chakariga Marimanti. You need to comment on that one. Then a comment on how you fed sports persons, because I had a young man who actually went all the way to Rwanda on the high jump, came back. I pleaded with your predecessor to meet him and fed him, the PSC Sports. I received the cold shoulders and nobody did any of that. What is the policy you're likely to have as regards the feting of sports persons? Young people, actors or artists, they are occupying us because they're not happy. They are doing all this work, but their royalties are not being paid. What are you likely to do about improvement on payment of royalties for these artists, including what benefit Kenya gets from all these nice movies we see internationally with the Animal World, National Geographic, Animal Films, Wildlife? What benefit does Kenya get from all this? Because this is where we should be selling our property and receiving payment for. Thank you.
Nominee, answer those three.
Mr. Speaker, again, I'll try to summarize. On the Honorable Dawood's Chan, 2025, yes, we are prepared, and I would love to get a brief whether Kinoru Stadium is one of the beneficiaries in terms of either training or playing. I know, of course, Kinoru Stadium. I've even addressed a rally there, the famous rally before. And you speak to the same things I talked about. I told you about standards. A county starts a stadium, they build. Sometimes it is a money-minting project. There is no intention to complete, or even it's completed, it is shoddy. It is not just Kinoru alone. All the stadium across the country. There was the case of Kericho. They finished it and it was coming out. Machako was the same. There were many other places across the country. That is why it's important to put in place standards that you can measure against, so that if you don't achieve those standards, it is easy to even prosecute the contractor, because there is international standard adopted locally. And I promise you, that will be my greatest priority. And I hope I can do that within 3 months, because I have had a conversation and bring it to this house, so that this parliament and parliament can be able to pass regulations that will make sure that standards of sports facilities are adhered to. I also want to say that on the question of your demolished DCC office and the chief's office, if I look at the money you're asking, that if we speak, if also Honorable Kindiki is approved, this government is one government. We can tell Interior, please find other resources because we are straining insofar as completing the infrastructure, find other resources and build a DCC office. And Honorable Kindiki is not just your neighbor, is your friend. So we can be able to sort that issue, God willing. The third issue is that on the Chuka Stadium, I think also I was briefed that it's not yet complete. We need to just make sure that we complete now within the standards, with the required standards, so that we don't also complete hurriedly, but in a shoddy manner. Sorry for Chakarika Marimanti. You know it's my pet subject. I was there with your senator then to launch it in 2014. And the biggest problem as our country, and I pity my successor in this sense, that you have a pending bill of about 165 billion for road construction. I don't know what we are going to do because this is not just a ministry problem, it's also a budgetary problem. And when I see that Finance Act failed, and then the other Finance Act is also facing challenges to another gap of another 200 billion. I think we need to be serious as a country. If we really want this infrastructure, we must be able to raise our own resources and support the infrastructure sector. Unfortunately, or fortunately, our honorable member here, if he's approved, will be the Minister of Finance. I hope he will be able to solve that problems because he also has tolled roads in the Sori Road in Homa Bay. In Migori, in Homa Bay, sorry. Mr. Speaker, on the question of the particular student, I will be very deliberate, very personal to solve individual problems. I know athletics, you can have, do you know there are countries that travel with only one athlete? You know, the whole federation goes with one athlete.
Mozambique did so in more than 4 Olympics.
Yes, so we are lucky as a country.
She always came back with a gold medal.
Yes, Maria Mutola, yes, 800 meters. So, Mr. Speaker, we can be able to make sure that we meet that person individually. They are very important. By the time they are reaching that level, I am ready to meet them within the first 1 week when I go to office. And George, being my senior honorable, should be able to bring them.
You know, the nominee has been responding like he has already been approved. He's just said when I go to office, he's not used the word if at all.
I have used so many times.
Hearing him say, if I'm approved.
Yes. Should I be approved if I am approved, Mr. Speaker?
Mr. Speaker, go at you.
There is a problem with the royalties issues, Mr. Speaker, for our musicians and performing arts. Mr. Speaker, that responsibility, it's very important that we sort out corruption in the CMOs. The people who have been given the contract to collect, we should not give them a free hand to collect and distribute without government having a view of what, Mr. Speaker, is being collected. And I think this is an issue Parliament should take up seriously. I know it's not it will not be in the ministry that I've been proposed to. It is in the arts and culture, in the gender ministry, but it is something that I have been following personally. And I hope that KECOBO, the Kenya Copyright Board, will be a bit more serious. There is a lot of corruption-related issues have been raised insofar as identification of the CMOs and, Mr. Speaker, distribution of those resources. People must be able to earn from their sweat, Mr. Speaker, and I hope they will be supported. On the film industry, I know it's part of creative industry in the ministry that I've been proposed to serve if I am approved. Mr. Speaker, I have been told that the law that governs this sector is a 1963 law. Mr. Speaker, the association itself and the policy is also an old policy. Again, I've received a representation by many people who say, if you are approved, please organize the first meeting. I'm even told that insofar as filming our wildlife, the preference goes to foreign filming companies that come to film, and the local companies here do not get access to the and they're getting billions of money, Mr. Speaker. There is no accountability or transparency as to how much they are able to live in our country. This is an area that we must register all the filmmakers when they come to our country, but we must also facilitate our own filmmakers to be able to benefit from our own animals, Mr. Speaker, in our national parks and game reserves. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Owen,
thank you
one
very much.
question, followed by Robert, one question, Mule, one question, Raso, one question.
My one question, Honorable Speaker.
In that order.
Kipchumba Murkomen, you're my good friend, you know, but that notwithstanding.
Causing with the nominee.
Okay, I said notwithstanding. You know, you've mentioned Stadia all over Kenya, but you've not mentioned any in the North Coast. Unfortunately, this government has never invested anything in the North Coast in terms of Stadia. And you know, the coast in its own would be a very good place for sports. Even parliamentary games are coming to coast, but where will they play? You know, because we have no. So as you take, if you are given this opportunity, would you consider investing in Stadia in the lower coast to promote the youth there, where there's immense talent in terms of football and other things, but it has never been tapped because of lack of infrastructure? I thank you.
Robert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, I just want to mention one thing that I've heard you mention here about growing talents from schools. Maybe one of the reasons that this fails is because the capitation given for activities in school is totally inadequate, and that is under the Ministry of Education. So maybe you can talk to your counterpart, if approved. Just one question. We've seen delegations going for sports activities, international sports activities, where the officials, that is government, officers, carry huge delegations and, are living lavishly. Whereas the athletes and players are actually sometimes even stranded at airports. Can you tell Kenyans what you will do so that this kind of situation that embarrasses this country does not recur?
Mule. Thank you very much, Speaker. Nominee Murkomen. If you are proved by this House to be the seers of youth, creative economy, sports, I just want to look at the youth right now who are part and parcel of you, because I've seen your CV, you are part of Millennium. And then the army you have talked about cogency. What new programs you will bring on board to accommodate them to work with you in this ministry?
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Murkomen, my issue is about land for sports. If you move around Kenya, you find a lot of development. And even when you go around our counties and constituencies, we want to grow the talent of youth in either athletics or even other sports, whether it's rugby, football, hockey. But there are no pitches. People build everything, and then the youth, sometimes they play on the road. So going forward, I want to ask you if you will come up with even a cabinet paper or a white paper to suggest that counties or even constituencies must put so much land available so that you can develop pitches, small stadia, not necessarily the big stadiums that will cost a lot of money. And finally, Marsabit and other projects that are actually behind schedule have closed out youth because those stadiums cannot be used because they are under construction. Partially they are developed, and those structures, if they are going to be used, might collapse and cause unnecessary deaths. Maybe you can comment on that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Answer those, nominee.
Mr. Speaker, starting with Honorable Owen, there is marginalization of a number of regions, especially the ASAL areas, when it comes to Stadia. Mr. Speaker, I agree with Honorable Owen.
Kilifi is not ASAL.
It is. Part of Kilifi is ASAL, Mr. Speaker.
Not ASAL.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, in the northern part of the coast, there was already a proposal that Shanzu should have a big stadium, and that proposal is ongoing. It was even meant to be part of the African Cup of Nations preparation, but Mr. Speaker will follow up. But also in Kilifi itself, we need to work together to make sure we achieve this. I think the key thing is let's have an updated sports policy that says what is the standard of a stadium you have in a county, and which other pitches, including community training grounds, can be established, so that then, and which are going to be done by counties and what can be done by national government. And even after they have been constructed, what is the maintenance policy? Who is going to maintain? I think that once we have that policy, we have a way of sustaining those facilities. And Mr. Speaker, I totally agree with Honorable Mbui that the capitation, the problem is that we consider physical education, sports, Mr. Speaker, as a luxury, as an additional activity which can be done or not be done. We forget that can be the quickest way of developing our people. Mr. Speaker, I think we need to have a serious conversation with the Ministry of Education to make sure that we support sports activities deliberately. Luckily, the Sports Fund has been supporting sports activities like the National Football Championship. Sports Fund has been chipping in, but we need a structured way. In fact, in some countries, the Ministry of Sports would be combined together with education as one ministry, with one department being the sports, for structured working relationship between the two departments. And I think even without that being structured to be one ministry, we need to work together with one government to see how sports is how we are going to use our education institutions. By the way, I saw yesterday a number of Olympic winners, swimming and so forth, are in various schools in Europe. They keep, the commentator is saying, oh, this one has gone to this school in Europe, that has gone to this school in Europe, this is a student in this university. This should be the case. Schools and the university should be the breeding ground for our talents, and that is where they should be located. Mr. Speaker, on the delegation going to international sports, I think that my ministry will take, if I am approved, Mr. Speaker, my office will take a serious, Mr. Speaker, concerned, and make sure that we follow through the list of the people who are traveling, so that essential people can only travel. And if there are extra people who want to travel at their own cost, there is no problem. I also very careful not to call people joyriders, because I saw a friend of mine was being accused of having gone to Paris with their daughter, only to find out that he didn't travel using public money and the daughter didn't travel using public money. So sometimes we must get the facts. Usually MPs...
The most offensive one was when people called Kipchoge Keino a joyrider to Rio. It is the father of our athletics. In fact, if you are confirmed, you should guarantee this country to buy Keino a ticket to go to every Olympics until he gives up.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. What people don't realize also is that some of the officials go to the Olympics not to just go and watch. That is where you are scouting for potential investors in the area and partnerships. So there are people who go with specific roles to ensure that you engage in improving and getting investors. Some of the members of parliament also travel to these international games because they provide their oversight responsibility, but also they appreciate what's happening. When they come back here, they are able also to pass necessary laws and support the budgets for those athletes. So it is not always obvious, rather obvious, that everybody is a joyrider, but we will make sure that there are no joyriders using public resources. Remember also, Mr. Speaker, that some countries pay for their funds. They pay for the people who are going, the cheering squad. But Mr. Speaker, because of our limitation of resources, we need to work with the private sector the private sector to sponsor them. Our big corporations should be able to sponsor the people who are going to cheer our teams, because it's also important to go with a cheering squad if it's necessary. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Honorable Mule, I am very happy that he is asking a very pertinent question. In the youth sector, what am I going to do differently to make sure that our youth get jobs? First, let me say this, Mr. Speaker, it's an embarrassment that as a country, and this should collectively prick our conscience, that the budget for youth department, for core functions of the youth department, for an entire year is 51 million shillings. That is a shame, Mr. Speaker. In fact, when I was looking at the budget, I was asking myself, am I being set up to just go and sit in an office where you are not going to deliver anything to the youth of this country? How you budget is demonstrating your priorities, because if you really want to sort out youth issues, we must put resources for youth resources. You will remember, Mr. Speaker, after the post-election violence is when a serious discussion, and you were part of the negotiating team for the coalition government and for peace. You remember one of the discussion was, what are we going to do with the youth? And that's how Mzee Kibaki's government came up with Youth Fund, and they came up also with National Youth Council, and they came up with all those youth initiatives. You remember, Mr. Speaker, the youth ministry at that time had about 10 billion for implementing projects. Now the youth department has 51 million shillings. What happened to us? Because in 2013, when we lumped together the youth ministry with public service, the whole resources were channeled to National Youth Service. And then we forgot about the other core functions that are affecting the youth. This department has moved with 8 PSS within 10 years, Mr. Speaker. And so it has not had a proper institutional memory of implementation. Mr. Speaker, that is one area that we must fix the resources. Number two, there is a program, luckily, Mr. Speaker, that is supported by the World Bank, that's called Nyota. Its intention is to make sure that it reaches 19 years old up to 28 who have not gone past Form 4 in terms of recognition of their skills, improving of their skills, and attaching them to a specific work environment, and thereafter supporting some of them to do businesses. Mr. Speaker, that program is huge. It's about 20-something billion shillings in 5 years. I am going to be prudent in terms of managing and making sure that it achieves the objective of reaching 800,000 young people across the country. I ask members of parliament that we work together to make sure that the identification of the beneficiaries is per constituency, because the constituencies are the most equitable units at the country. The other thing, Mr. Speaker, we must do, and I was prepared to do that in the roads ministry, we must do what President Roosevelt did. After the Great Depression, between 1933 and 1938, President Roosevelt came up with something called the New Deal. The New Deal was to work on deliberate mechanism of finding jobs through government projects for young people. And the plan was to make sure that when they were building the beltways, the airports, the postal corporations, the bridges, they made sure that they infused in the contracts the number of young people that are going to be employed. I will suggest, Mr. Speaker, that in our road contracts, if you give a contractor, say, 100 million worth of a contract, we must tell that contractor, infused in this contract, you will employ 100 youth in that locality for 3 years. And we must be deliberate, even if it means adding the amount to the contract of and above. If we do that, Mr. Speaker, in railway contracts, in the port contracts, the airport contracts, road contracts, we are going to deliberately deal with the people of Kenya. If we are going to give out contracts to everybody to maximize profit, those people will use machines. What has happened, Mr. Speaker, in places like Kericho? Because of the introduction of machines, there are so many jobless young people in Kericho and other places like Limuru and other tea growing areas. We must tamper the need for profit by deliberately getting a new deal for young people in this country that are going to get jobs directly. The last thing I want to say is that there are fragmented initiatives that target young people. You will find that the AGPO, the program that is ensuring that contracts go to young people, is being managed by Treasury. There, the Treasury only see the registration of the company as a young person. They don't even realize that this young person is just a facade. You have another initiative in ICT that is called Ajira. You have another initiative in Public Service Commission that is called internship. So initiatives are fragmented. What we are going to do in the Ministry of Youth, if I'm approved, is to make sure that there is a oversight. These all initiatives across ministries are going to be reported to the Ministry of Youth so that we can collect them and we make sure the oversight and make sure that we force all government ministries, departments and agencies to make sure in their performance contracting they report annually how many youth are benefited from the programs and with clear statistics of where the youth are found. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of Honorable Raso, I agree with him that we need to establish, and again it goes to the policy, that what kind of study are you going to build in different parts of the country, and we must make sure that is why the absence here is the disjointed relationship between the national government and county government, because there is no intergovernmental framework under the law that makes sure that we work together to establish those community training grounds and the issue of stadium. The issue of Marsabit Stadium, Mr. Speaker, I will make sure that I follow up personally. I was really wishing to go to Marsabit as a Minister of Roads and Transport because we have some airstrips we were working on there, and also we are open to the Lapset corridor. We want to put ICD there. So, Mr. Speaker, I will go now. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of this ministry, if I'm approved, to make sure that the stadium is complete.
We want you to shift your heart from roads to youth and sports if you are confirmed.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, but as a cabinet secretary, you still have the responsibility of supporting
I know there is
the rest of
collective
government.
responsibility, but don't live in nostalgia. Let's have now, yes, Junet.
Point, when we are looking at the suitability of a nominee, we also look at his commitment to the work he's going for. So I wanted to ask, your removal from roads transport to Ministry of Sports Youth, do you see it as a demotion?
Mr. Speaker, first of all, there is a committee of ministries. Mr. Speaker, when I was in roads and transport, I never at any point thought that my colleague in youth and creative economy and sports was a lesser minister than myself. So I don't see any ministry to be different from the other.
Shuria?
Thank you.
One question, Meshi, one question, Rahab,
Yes.
one question.
Thank you. Let me just add, as everyone was talking about Stadia, Mheshimiwa, we don't have any Stadia in Northeastern Province, 0. So you better add that into your list. There's no sports.
Meshi?
I think we do better than, I haven't even asked my question, sir. My question, that was just a comment.
I told you to stop preambles to questions.
Mr. Speaker, if everybody spoke for their region and I don't say
Go
that,
ahead.
I'll be killed once I leave here.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
Mheshimiwa Murkomen, youth employment and job creation. Matrix requires concerted efforts, including mainstreaming of the issues in all ministry policies, rather than youth ministry as a standalone solution point. So what is your take and what measures will you champion to achieve this complete mainstreaming in all ministries to push the agenda of youth? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Mishi.
Asante Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti. Mheshimiwa Mwenyekiti, nimemsikiza Mheshimiwa Murkomen ambaye pengine anaweza kuwa waziri wa vijana na michezo, lakini nataka nimregeshe nyuma wakati akiwa waziri wa mambo ya barabara na uchukuzi. Sisi kama watu wa Likoni kupitia bunge niliuliza swala la kivuko cha Mtongwe na tukaweka pesa ambayo ilikuwa ijenge kivuko cha Mtongwe cha feri. Rampu hiyo ilijengwa kidogo tu, yani kama mbeni mfano tu wa kujenga, baada ya kuweka mamilioni ya pesa. Mpaka leo ferry channel, kwa wale ambao hawajui Kiswahili, Mtongwe ferry channel, mpaka leo kivuko kile hakifanyi kazi. Wakazi wa Mtongwe wanataabika sana kuvuka kwenda katika ngambo ya pili. Vile vile ile floating bridge ambayo ilikuwa pale iliyotengezwa kwa milioni 300 ilikuja ikakatizwa kwa ghafla bila kuita wananchi kuwaeleza kumeenda vipi ama kumekwenda vipi. Sasa mimi nauliza, umezungumza maneno matamu ya kumtoa nyoka pangoni, lakini kusema sio kutenda. unaweza kusema na ikawa ni mkono mtupu au rambwi. Mimi nataka nimuulize waziri, utatutibishia vipi ya kwamba haya ulioyasema hazitakuwa ahadi za urongo kama zile ulizoahidi kupitia wizara yako kwa watu wa Likoni, na mpaka leo wanalia hakuna floating bridge iliyekwa wakati wa regime ya nyuma, sasa hakuna tena, kivuko cha Mtongwe hakuna. Mwisho tupe tathmini ya talanta hela. Asante mwenyekiti.
Oka amekatalia pangoni. Yes,
thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Rahab.
Yeah, to the nominee, I don't know whether you are aware that most of the constituencies, we don't have youth officers for the last 5 to 7 years. And I'm sure you need those youth officers because they'll help you to go on the ground and do mapping and know exactly what is happening on the ground. Honorable Speaker, I've also received another question from your friend, Honorable Murkomen. They are asking, if you are confirmed, what are you going to do to gain their confidence, your youth? Thank you.
Nominee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me start with Honorable Sharia. First of all, youth, no, I agree first that there are no studies in the, as I said earlier, in the arid and semi-arid areas. When I was doing the tournament last year, Mr. Speaker, Turkana players were playing on a sand pitch, Mr. Speaker. It's very disheartening to see how marginalization is being perpetuated, and I think we need to correct that, to give facilities to young people in the arid and semi-arid areas. And I have been deliberate, even in the Ministry of Roads, to make sure that arid and semi-arid areas are also taken care of. Mr. Speaker, on the question of youth mainstreaming, I agree with Honorable Sharia also that we shouldn't talk about youth only to be confined to youth department or the youth ministry. It is a mainstreamed issue across the board, and that's why I said earlier that the youth ministry itself should provide oversight whether the other departments of government are achieving the objective of creating employment and creating opportunities for young people to do business and making sure that they are given access to have a voice. Mr. Speaker, part of those initiatives that were done after post-election violence by the second term of President Kibaki was to have a National Youth Council, which has never been operationalized up to now. I participated in the youth agenda in the whole conversation about how to operationalize the National Youth Council. I want to promise the people of Kenya that we are going to give the young people of Kenya a voice to elect their own leaders from grassroots national level, so that then the objective of National Youth Council is going to be achieved, where they will have their own leaders elected by themselves. Part of the reasons why young people are in the streets protesting is because they feel that they are not being involved in decision making, or they have no voice, they have no channels of releasing that which they would like to give to the country. And I don't want tokenism in this case. They must also be part of the decision making. Mr. Speaker, when I got any opportunity to appoint board members in the previous ministry where I was, Mr. Speaker, without being nostalgic, I made sure that youth were in every agency that I appointed. In fact, in some of them, like the Kenya Railway, there are more than 2. If you go to Kenya Ports Authority, we appointed a 26-year-old board member. And these are big corporations that people think that young people should not be sitting there. I made sure that there was a deliberate effort to mentor. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Murkomen has asked a question. Can the youth of Kenya trust me to lead them? They should trust me because of my track record. My track record, Mr. Speaker, in the previous ministry speaks for itself. My track record as a senator speaks for itself. My track record as a mentor. I have mentored people, Mr. Speaker, who have become members of parliament.
That is what you started with.
Leaders and MCAs. No, but the question was asked that how do they trust me? They should trust me because I have mentored young people until some have accessed higher positions of governance in this country. And if they got a minister that they should be proud of, and they will be seeing it is Kipchumba Murkomen.
If you are confirmed.
Yeah, if I'm confirmed. Mr. Speaker, on the question of Honorable Mishi, ningependa kusema
jibu Kiswahili kile sanifu watu wangu pia waelewe.
Bwana Speaker, tumetenda
Kiswahili sanifu or the opposite.
Bwana Spika, tumetenda kazi nyingi sana katika poti ya Mombasa, na nilianzia hapo awali wakati niliposema tumeimarisha biashara katika poti ya Mombasa. Sasa hivi uongozi wa poti ya Mombasa mkurugenzi,
kwa nini hukumaliza kivuko cha Mtongwe?
Ndio nakuja
kwa nini floating bridge ilitolewa?
Ndio ninasema hivyo, Bwana Spika. Kuimarisha utendakazi katika poti ya Mombasa ilikuwa pamoja na kuondoa ile floating bridge yenye ilikuwa pale, kwa sababu ilikuwa inapoteza masaa 8 ya biashara katika poti ya Mombasa. Ukisikia kwamba biashara kwa poti ya Mombasa imeinuka, ni kwa sababu tulitoa zile vikwazo ambazo zilikuwa zinatufanya tusifikie malengo yetu kama wizara ya uchukuzi. Na kwa hivyo kuna mara nyingine lazima uhakikishe ya kwamba unaangalia faida yenye inatokezea kwa watu wote wa Likoni, sio wachache. Ya pili, Bwana Spika, tumeharakisha ile barabara ambayo ni Southern Bypass yenye inaweza kufukisha wananchi kupitia Dongo Kundu bila kutumia ile bridge. Ya tatu, Bwana Spika, nilisafiri na Mheshimiwa Rais tukahakikisha kwamba tutaanzisha ile bridge ya Likoni Bridge, mpango kubwa sana ambayo itabadilisha maisha ya watu ya Likoni na Mombasa. Na kwa hivyo Mtongwe Bridge ferry, Bwana Spika, kweli ni kweli kwamba tumeanza kazi, na ninaamini ya kwamba wale wamebaki pale watahakikisha wamemaliza yenye imebaki. Bwana Spika, nakubaliana na Mheshimiwa Mwishi kwamba kusema si kutenda, na ni ukweli kwamba Bwana Spika, nilitenda mengi bila kusema. Ni wazi ya kwamba wewe na naibu spika Mheshimiwa Gladys Sholei mlisema wazi ya kwamba makosa kubwa ya serikali hii ni kwamba hatujatangaza vilivyo yale yote ambayo tumetenda. Kwa hivyo, kwa sababu nimepata nafasi hii, hayo ni baadhi ya mambo ambayo tumetenda katika wizara hiyo. Bwana Spika,
kwanza uvoda mwenyekiti.
Bwana Spika,
mwenyekiti, nataka hapa ieleweke, kwa sababu huu mradi wa floating bridge haukufanyika kitambo, na ukumbuke ulitumia milioni 300. Sasa ukisema muliitoa tu kwa mambo mengine, wakati ilipokuwa inatekelezwa hamkufikiria hizo milioni 300 za Wakenya zimepotea tu kiholela.
Bwana Spika, ni kweli kwamba tumepoteza milioni 300, lakini tumetengeneza bilioni ngapi? Tumeongeza faida ya poti kwa bilioni 10. Ukilinganisha
faida au
mapato tuseme, but it's faida because it's the difference between the 60 billion we raise and the amount that is Mr. Speaker, I didn't want to call it profit, but if you really want to call it profit, it's profit by 10 billion shillings. And so to chase 300 million at the expense of 10 billion, it was a wise decision to make sure that you do away with that floating bridge for the benefit. Mr. Speaker, Mheshimiwa aliuliza talanta hela.
Yes.
Hii ni kusema kwamba tuko tayari kubadilisha talanta yako ikupatie hela, na ni kwa njia nyingi, kwa kuweza kuanzisha katika mashinani yale miradi ambayo yatahakikisha kwamba kuna mchipuko, Bwana Spika, ya michezo hali mbalimbali, pia ya kuhakikisha kwamba tumeleta teknolojia kusaidia kuhakikisha kwamba Wakenya ambao wako na talanta wanaweza kutangaza talanta yao na kuweza kupata hela kwa mifuko yao, Bwana Spika, kulingana na ile bottom up economic transformation agenda ya serikali hii. Bwana Spika, mwisho ningependa kusema yale maswali ya Mheshimiwa Rehab Mukami, that we don't have the youth officers. It is true. As I told you, the youth department has been neglected. And even where we have youth officers, they are not utilized. Because if you have 51 million to run your core projects across the country, it is evident that you are not going to be able to utilize those people. There was a request already that has been made to Treasury to support programs for youth. And also because of this Nyota program that we are going to start, we will need these youth officers in every constituency to be replaced and to be supported to make sure that they can do the work that they need to do. What are you giving to do there? To gain the confidence, Mr. Speaker. There is no other way. There is no other way of gaining confidence except to work.
I've already answered that.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
We're going towards the end. Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Murkomen, I just want some undertaking from you. One is the World Championships, which were held in 2025 in Tokyo, was supposed to actually have been held in Kenya, but we lost the bid because all our stadiums, including Kasarani, did not meet the international standard. Right now, because you're building, the stadiums are being refurbished, assure us that you will ensure that we bid for the 2027, or 2029 or 2032, at least in our lifetime, because it was sad that we actually lost this. Also, and I will volunteer to help you do the bidding documents, because I'm good at that. Number two.
In what capacity? He has not been confirmed.
As a pro bono. If he's confirmed. Pro bono if he's confirmed. Also, one other suggestion, the reason why Nigeria Nollywood is very successful is because they have a law that provides that 70% of their content in their local television stations are local. That's how Nollywood grew. Also, there is a question here by a Gen Z. Let me just look at that question. Okay, here. I have a message here that says, please ask the incoming Waziri, what is his plan on ensuring that there is no gap of miscommunication or disconnect between the government and the youth Gen Z and Gen Alpha? Does he plan to have an advisor who is this age group so that they can advise him? Asante.
Yeah. Yes, Jeanette?
I wanted to ask one last question. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the nominee. One of the problems this government, we faced this government in the last 1 or 2 months, Mr. Speaker, emanated from what is called opulence, arrogance, show-off, and unfortunately or fortunately, you are put in the center of it. What is your reply to that? Or what do you say about that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me start by, yes, I agree with Honorable Cholet that, Mr. Speaker, we should be holding world championships. You remember we held the was it under 17 or under 20? Yes. Most of those athletes, under 20, and we were in Kasarani, and most of those athletes now are at the Olympics. Mr. Speaker, I believe that if we deliver the infrastructure we have talked about to the standard required, we should be able to host it at the next available opportunity. And I want to thank the Honorable Cholet that should I be confirmed, she will also be willing to support, Mr. Speaker, and that is patriotism. That's an act of patriotism. And number two is that this law, I know we have a policy in Kenya, I think it was put at the time of Honorable Tuju, if I'm not wrong, that says 60% of the content should be local, but as a policy, as a directive. But I think we need to move it to law. So when we are revising because we have now a draft creative industry bill and policy, I think as we move to that direction, we should include that in the bill. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Cholet also has talked about communication and reaching out to the younger people. I want to confirm that, Mr. Speaker, I will make sure that I work with the young people, and I will, resources permitting, and it's my wish that I get somebody to work with me who is at the age of what is now called Gen Z or Gen Alpha. That group, Mr. Speaker, who are in their 20s to 30s, Mr. Speaker, I would like to have one of them work in my office, but also I'd like to make sure that the internship programs that we also have in the government, some of those who will intern within the ministry to intern in my office, so that they can also help me build my capacity among young people, so that I continue benefiting from the benefits working of these young people. By the way, I want to assure our young people that they should not fear anything about. I am very enthusiastic about sports and youth, and that, Mr. Speaker, is important to make that assurance. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Jeanette has asked a very pertinent question. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to say this. Mr. Speaker, I am not arrogant. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I am as gentle as a dove. For those who know me, who are my friends, they know that I cannot hurt a fly. Mr. Speaker, I have many friends in this parliament. They know me. And I have many friends who I've worked with. The problem with public service, and particularly if you have been a politician, you are always around here confronting challenges. And sometimes when you speak in a particular manner, it's concluded that that person is arrogant. Mr. Speaker, I am not. And as a Christian, I should not be containing arrogance. Number two, Mr. Speaker, on the question of opulence, Mr. Speaker, I must say this with utmost respect. I do not know even what opulence means, Mr. Speaker. And let me say this. I take it to mean that people who are opulent are the ones that bask in wealth and modern things. You will see them exposing where they are with their families, where they live, showing which car they drive and all that. Mr. Speaker, I just became a victim, unfortunately, of a crossfire, of a conversation. On things, Mr. Speaker, I do not go anywhere to announce to somebody that I wear this, I do that. It's just that some pictures take something you wear and this, that, Mr. Speaker. Ultimately...
And you spoke carelessly somewhere.
Ultimately, Mr. Speaker...
In some radio show.
It wasn't careless, Mr. Speaker. Ultimately, I was asked in a radio show a direct question. What is the most expensive shoe, tie, watch you have ever worn? Mr. Speaker, I had
You
two
didn't
choices.
know it was a trick?
No, it's not a trick. Even if it was a trick, I had two choices. Either to lie or to say the truth.
Or not to answer.
Mr. Speaker, no, let me just come to that.
That was the third
Mr. Speaker, I would have refused to answer, but I also had the opportunity to say the truth. And by saying that truth, Mr. Speaker, having been put that question to me, Mr. Speaker, it was not by my own choice to go and say, and Mr. Speaker, you know, for me who has grown up as a son of a squatter in Mbadi Forest, you know that even when we were growing up, if you get one shoe or one watch like the one I got when I was in primary school, that is your Sunday best. That is your Sunday best. It's that one expensive thing you have that sometimes you are happy with. But to say I'm opulent, Mr. Speaker, I must say this with utmost respect. I have never gloated anywhere about anything I wear, anything I have, Mr. Speaker. Even where I live, Mr. Speaker, I've never gone to announce to people that I have this kind of a house. Or, Mr. Speaker, I've never even bragged about the car I drive, even if all those things could be more expensive than the things that have been mentioned. And I have said this, and I say this when the president nominated me. There is a verse in the Bible that says, if your eye is going to hurt a neighbor or your hand is going to hurt a neighbor, you better gouge it out so that you don't make your neighbor to sin. And I say this when the president nominated me, that if in any way I behaved either by speech or conduct or my lifestyle, Mr. Speaker, in a manner that hurts any Kenyan, I apologize profusely. Mr. Speaker, that I said, and I mean it. I mean it as a Kipchumba, and I mean it as a Christian. That if I had, and Mr. Speaker, to demonstrate my commitment, Mr. Speaker, if any Kenyan tells me tomorrow that you can only wear butter shoes, and it will help me, Mr. Speaker, I'm being very honest, that if you wear only butter shoes, it will promote us to focus on your job and to hold you account on your job, Mr. Speaker, I'll do so. Because I do not want to distract the people of Kenya from the things I do. And I say this, Mr. Speaker, this is the conclusion, having managed, Mr. Speaker, a ministry that has so many agencies and a huge budget, I am extremely proud as Kipchumba Murkomen that for 2 years, I have not been mentioned on questions of incompetence. I've done my job with utmost hard work. The people I've left back in the ministry are very proud of the work we did. Number two, Mr. Speaker, that in those 2 years, I have not been accused by anybody on anything related to impropriety or corruption. Integrity is my middle name, Mr. Speaker, and I intend to keep that integrity, Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the misconception that came around this. And I will remain in that narrow path, Mr. Speaker, for the benefit of our country.
Don't fear, don't live in fear. Honorable Murkomen, I'll ask you two short questions. Number one, I'll take you back to football, because football is the most captive sport in the world. You know that. In this country, there was a time when our second president, out of probably misadvice, outlawed social football clubs. World over, if you go to Germany, if you go to UK, all those clubs are born out of social groupings. Emirates, we have my team, Arsenal. You have Manchester United, you have Man City, you have Bayern Munich, Bayer Leverkusen, all this. Can you, pardon? Our team. You also have our team, and you have Murkomen's team called Manu. If you find favor with this committee and become a CS, would you consider formulating policy to the extent that corporates don't have to run football teams, but they can sponsor football teams? I don't understand why breweries should be running a football team. Soon, perhaps Safaricom will run a football team, and others. Why can't they channel those resources to social groupings that have got emotional attachment to the game that will promote football in this country? Number two, when FIFA continued unreasonably interfering in the management of football in Nigeria and Cameroon, the government deliberately tell them, go to hell, suspend us for 2-3 years, it doesn't matter, we'll organize our sports, hold elections, have accountable leadership, and we'll come back to play with you. At some point, you might just have to bite the bullet and take us in that direction, because the mess that we see in the management of football in this country is not taking us anywhere. Remember the good old days of Muhammad Abbas, Josephat Morila, JJ Masika, Onyango Jogo, all Ayoi, all those greats. And those are about 20, 30 years ago. We had better football in Kenya 30 years ago than now. You should undertake to Kenyans that you are going to correct this mess. And if it means Kenya missing out on FIFA activities for a year, so be it, so that we can put our things right. Number 4, you already alluded to this. Please change the law, manage organizations that run our sports, give them proper legislation that will say you can be elected, whoever you are, but you run 3-4 years, renewable ones, and you go. So that we don't have people living in sports in perpetuity without giving room to others. I also want to ask you about our athletes. I know you are not a minister yet, hoping you might get favor. Our athletes are treated very badly. I went to the Olympics in London in 2012. All the managers of our athletes who are going to bring us gold medals are flying first class, business class. Our athletes are flying economy, and they go there and they're put in dormitories where they're given a stipend of $50 to $100 maximum, and the managers who do nothing are sleeping in 5-star hotels. You must change this if you are confirmed, because this country can manage its marketing worldwide through our athletics. Which country in the world has its national anthem played in capitals of the world every other day, other than Kenya, because of our athletes? None. Not even the American anthem or Chinese anthem or Indian anthem is played as many times around the world as our anthem. So we hope that you'll do that. If you can respond to that, then I'll read you a few things from Kenyans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quickly, I think there must be a question why AFC and Gor Mahia have survived this long. Shabana to a good extent, yes, even Shabana. It's because it's linked to community.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I can't agree with you more. When we are revising this sports policy, we need to support community clubs.
Yes.
You wonder why one would have a problem with that. I think it was a misconception then that where there was.
Moise said he was fighting tribalism, which was not true.
Yeah, because it's one thing. There are positive things about communities that it doesn't become negative tribalism. You know, the fact that our community owns a particular club is something we should be, and we will do that. Number two is that, Mr. Speaker, as I have said earlier, with utmost respect, our colleagues and friends who are now managing FKF must be ready for change. Mr. Speaker, I know when I say this, they are dangling a particular threat that, oh, you know, if you interfere, we will be banned, and if we are banned, we will not do AFCON. If we are banned, the junior team will not go to Dominican Republic for the World Under 17. Mr. Speaker, we will not operate in this ministry using blackmail. And we are not saying we hate the people who are in that office. They have done their bit. We can as well deploy them to do something else. But let's open the door for other Kenyans to elect sports leaders of sports federation. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that sports like tennis, like basketball, like cricket, like badminton can really employ so many people? Do you know what? Most of those federations are in people's briefcases. You know, they are walking around with it. You know, there is somebody in this country who is in the badminton federation who travels to Malaysia, where the headquarters is, and he is getting some small allowances and filing returns. And nobody knows. As I have said, transparency must be achieved. You must publish your accounts. You are receiving this money on behalf of the people of Kenya, and we must make sure that FKF, AUG, and other federations are going to be run transparently. Mr. Speaker, let me just, for avoidance of doubt, I will not be able to do this job alone. You can see the strength of those cartels. If I get
Parliament will support you.
Yes, Parliament, we will really need Parliament if I am confirmed. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we will need the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya to create a conducive environment with our judges of dealing with disputes in sports federations, because there are many federations where the officials are surviving on a court order for more than 10 years. That is ridiculous. Yet the people of Kenya and the young people are losing opportunities because of those delayed elections. The last thing I'd like to say is, Mr. Speaker, yes, I agree with you that our athletes are treated badly. As I said earlier, my first assignment will be to put together stakeholders in every federation. I will start with football and athletics, Mr. Speaker. I want to call all the stakeholders, let them say all the issues. Their cabinet secretary would listen, their ministry will listen, and then from there, we agree on a protocol on how to treat our athletes when they are in international assignments, with clarity of where they will live and so forth. But also we will need also parliamentary support to make sure that the resources can support also where they are going to stay.
Good. One Kenyan asks, I think why are students made to leave school or be absent from school to participate in school games, but are never rewarded like school fees rebates? Another one asks, will you complete Masinde Muliro Stadium in Bungoma? Another one asks, will you complete Kericho airstrip? That you already answered, even Masinde you talked about. Another one asks, why didn't you open Dongokundu Bridge? I think Mishi has talked to that. Another one says, through sports talents, you can integrate refugees with the host community. Why haven't you done? Do you promise to do this for the refugees of Kakuma in Turkana? Then there was another one.
The National Youth Service.
The National Youth Council, why hasn't it held elections for 12, how many years? They say 12. 12 years. You had already talked to that. And somebody says, and this is not your responsibility, that NYS should be in your ministry. That is up to the appointing authority and the designating authority, who is His Excellency the President.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, it's not a question.
Yes.
It's a comment, just a comment, a brief one from Kenyans. They've asked that I tell the nominee that the young people, they are buying computers, mobiles, laptops, software. They're quite expensive, and they use it to make money through creative, what they record and they share out there. And we already taxed them under the Finance Act 2023. They're asking you, please do not tax them any further, or don't propose any further taxes. And lastly, know about mental health challenges for our young people.
Yes, nominee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The rewards, school rebates, yes, St. Patrick's High School, where I went, used to have this free scholarship for all the sports athletes. And they used to even to have a scholarship also for the volleyballers when we were doing very well. Schools should be able to have that kind of a scheme because their sportsmen promote the school, and they can be given scholarships with the board of management working together with the administration to make sure that they support the schools. What we can promise is that we should be able to push a policy where winners in regional, national, whatever, are recognized. I don't know how CBC will work further beyond grade 9. Hopefully, even in the next stage, it's going to be able to integrate these sportsmen and women, or the girls and boys, to make sure that they are rewarded max for their performance in the field. I hope that can be done, and that's a policy decision that is in the Ministry of Education. As I said, it's a very important ministry in terms of working together with the sports department. Dongokundu Bridge will be opened soon. It's nearly complete. That is almost there. Sports integration of the refugees with local community. Mr. Speaker, a little bit of this is not in our ministry per se. That is the integration of the local community and the refugee. That is a decision that has to be made from the interior, from immigration, on the status of the refugee. But as you know, the refugees have a chance to also compete in Olympics.
Man called Losike was trying to link it to sports.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yes, Mr. Speaker, then I understand what he was trying to do. On the National Youth Council, I spoke to it and I said that I am going to make sure that we do the elections from the grassroots level. On the question of taxes has been raised. Taxes is on gadgets and equipment and so forth. A GIRI program and Jitume, which is being run from the ICT ministry, had a plan around giving affordable gadgets to young people, including the hubs in the constituency. My proposal is that all these constituency-centered initiatives, community training grounds, Jitume hubs, sports academies, we should make sure that they are in one place so that when we identify public land in one constituency, we put all these facilities in one place so that youth can benefit from all of them. On the mental health is a very serious issue, Mr. Speaker. Mental health is a very, very serious issue. In fact, mental health goes together with, we must, Mr. Speaker, put in place socio-psycho support. As I enumerated earlier, I've schooled here and abroad. In Kenya, you go to university from first year up to fourth year, you don't meet a counselor anywhere. You go through your problems. Students who lose their parents, they go bury a parent or a relative, they come back, they continue. Nobody talks to them. Nobody cares why their marks have dropped. We have a very, very rude and caring, crude actually, and caring system of education. We must make sure that we put in place social cycle support in our learning institutions. On the sports part, Mr. Speaker, the federations must, and that was part of the recommendation from the Agnes Tirop, the committee that was formed after the Agnes Tirop unfortunate situation, that we must put in place social cycle support for all the athletes. We must also put in place a voluntary saving scheme through NSSF, so that when they are active, they can be able to save for them to support them later. Last, Mr. Speaker, there must also be we must find a way of reaching out to former athletes, boxers, footballers. We know our footballers who are suffering because of mental health. Even athletes, Mr. Speaker. Some started with alcohol and then or drugs and then ended up, Mr. Speaker, in the situation they had. Some. Yes, the group of the boxers like Congestina, the football. I don't want to mention all their names, but I know them because I come from a county that has so many athletes. Mr. Speaker, you go to Iten or neighborhood, you will find former world beaters. Mr. Speaker, people who won marathons. Somebody sleeping in a trench, Mr. Speaker, drunk because of frustrations. Perhaps the little resources they got was swept away by parasites, Mr. Speaker, that come in form of women or relatives or neighbors. Mr. Speaker, their mental health.
Women are not parasites.
Mr. Speaker, as I said even earlier, even men are parasites. I said that earlier. I said some of our girls are being preyed on by men who pretend to be husbands. So.
Mr. Speaker, lastly,
yes, Mr.
nominee, in case you are approved, for our athletes, I started a policy when I was in foreign affairs. World beaters like Young, Faith, Kipyegon, Mora, and others. You should have a policy of giving them protocol services when they travel. Translators. You know, I remember one of our athletes, when she finished a marathon and had won, she was asked, how did you find the sport? She says, I just ran and kept running, and then God came into me, and I continued running, and I won. You know, if you give them support services, media, and there is nothing that outlaws speaking in mother tongue after you have won, as long as you're somebody next to you who can translate what you are saying to the world. So you should consider a policy of giving them that. Then lastly, under President Kibaki, there was a policy of rewarding our athletes who won medals in the Olympics and elsewhere. President Ruto started awarding those who get gold medals. Is it medals or break world records? Who break world records? We should also extend that to those who win gold medals, silver medals. You know, to some countries, even coming back with bronze is big business. It becomes a national celebration. So you should also have a policy of graduated rewards for these world beaters who bring glory to our country. Now, lastly, I'll ask you a few, those were just comments. But if you want to comment.
Something. Mr. Speaker, I think the biggest problem is that we don't prepare our athletes for after career. If you see the commentators in the Olympics, you will have people like Lewis, people like Michael Johnson, Maria Mutola, you know, former footballers, former athletes are now having opportunity for commentaries. Some, like Sebastian Coe, are now leading World Athletics Council. At least we have Tergat and a few others. Mr. Speaker, what is lacking is we need to make sure that when athletes are come up at 18, 19, 20, they should not leave their education. We must find ways of still linking them to education. If you see what Faith has done and Kipchoge, it is very commendable. You can see they can express themselves, they are able to speak, and they have a better career when they retire. And we need to do more of the same in terms of our athletes, and I agree with you on the same. The last thing is to say that the reward system, the policy, the draft policy has provided for how we will reward our athletes. And this, I will make sure that we complete it so that we have a standard reward system. Sometimes, the government of the day, because elections is about to happen, there's a world championship and there's a clamor in the country that, oh, they have not been rewarded and so forth. They quickly say this athlete will be given 10 million, this one will be given 5, this will be given 20. Unsustainable in the first place. When elections is over, we go back to so having a policy will make sure that it's better to say a goal is 1 million and it's achievable, or 500,000, or whichever amount of money which will be agreed and is graduated and paid. I have been told that in the ministry there is almost, I don't know, 500 million or so, I can't remember the figure, of rewards that were promised that are pending. together with pending bills. So the athletes have already retired and they have not been paid. I will make sure those are expedited and paid out, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Murkomen, have you ever been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related report or investigations?
No, Mr. Speaker.
Are you an official of any political party in Kenya?
Mr. Speaker, no.
What is your net worth?
Mr. Speaker, I need to explain this. From the time I was here to now, Mr. Speaker, once I was approved, I got an opportunity.
Answer the first question.
No, I will add it, Mr. Speaker. Just
what
give me
is
1
your
minute.
net worth?
I will conclude with it. That, Mr. Speaker, there is a scheme in the public service where if you're a public servant, you can get a mortgage. So after I was approved, I took a mortgage of 40 million, Mr. Speaker, and invested it. Mr. Speaker, beside that, Mr. Speaker, my assets have generally appreciated, the ones that I had before, based on the calculation of the index existing by about 20 million. And Mr. Speaker, other earnings from farming and other businesses, I got about 10 million. So from when I was appointed up to now, I've increased by, Mr. Speaker, plus or minus 70 million shillings, meaning that from the 550 that I declared when I was last year appointed, it is now 620 million, Mr. Speaker. Including all the loans and everything, Mr. Speaker.
Wacha uchokozi wewe. You want to say including watches. I heard you.
Not that one. Not that one, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Murugana.
Mr. Speaker, let him confirm. There's a Kenyan here who says you actually have 2 choppers and they fly all over Kenya and doing all manner of things. Is that true?
On any aerial transport?
Not yet,
in the name of choppers?
No, not yet, Mr. Speaker. Maybe in many years later when I've retired.
Now, Honorable Murkomen, we have cross-checked your documents with what we have. We found them in order. You also had the distinction of receiving the highest memoranda against your appointment, 92 in number, and you responded to all of them satisfactorily. And we want to wish you well. You have answered all the questions in a good manner. And unless you are lawfully held, you are discharged to take your leave.
Mr. Speaker, I plead with this committee to find my suitability favorably. And Mr. Speaker, should I be approved, once again, I will serve with great honor and dignity, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Good night. Sergeant, can you escort the nominee and give him his documents? Honorable members, you've done very well. Congratulations, especially this last round. All of you avoided unhelpful preambles to your questions and asked your questions very well. It is now 8:30. It is 8:34. Tomorrow, again, breakfast will be served here at 6:45. So you must be here by 6:45. Breakfast up to 8. You'll have some little briefing at the breakfast. Thereafter, we start at exactly 8. You have Hassan Joho, number 1, Alfred Mutua Nganga, number 2, Wycliffe Oparanya, number 3. Justin Beta Njoka Mturi, number 4, and Stella Soilangat, number 5. If we can do the way we have done today and yesterday, and day before, I think it will be good. Thank you and good night.
7:30.
Yes.
Should we start at 7:30?
Yes.
Let them know that.